Hey everyone, Tactics here, and in this video, I'm going to talk about Guardian Druids, specifically the couple of nerfs that we've had in the last week or so regarding our 4-piece Architects aligner and kind of my thoughts on that. Might be a little bit of a rant, but you know, we'll see where it goes. So for those unaware, guys, Architects aligner got a couple nerfs, so 35% on the damage and healing, on top of it getting target capped. Now, they did put out some reasoning for this here, and I'll read that out. So the performance of Architect's Aligner has become an outlier amongst other tank tier set bonuses in both single and multi-target situations. Due to this, with weekly maintenance, we'll be adjusting its damage or its performance to bring closer to other bonuses. Thank you for the feedback, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so there's some things to unpack here. So first off, the target capping and damage reduction, there's no way you guys didn't see this coming, right? Like that's for sure. 100% in AoE, this needed a nerf. 100%. There's no argument for me. 100% target capping also needed to happen. Just the uncapped AoE was ridiculously strong. But when it comes to this reasoning, I'm not sure I follow fully. And also, if you go by this reasoning, single and multi-target situation are the problem. I don't know why they nerfed the healing. The healing, I don't think, was crazy. I don't think it was insane. And frankly, if you looked into it, it does a lot of overhealing as well, right? Especially because it's only ticking during your incarn. And your incarn, you're quite durable. You're able to spam things like Thrash if you're wearing UFR, get tons of Earth Warden stacks if you're not, even if you're not UFR, right? So you're in general, you're spamming Frenzied Regen. You have a lot of healing, you have a lot of defense in your incarn, and this healing was not doing a ton of work. So nerfing it seems a bit odd. The other odd bit here is saying in single target it was a bit of an outlier. Now, I'm not saying Guardian Druids were bad in single target, but I'm saying I don't think they were an outlier at all, especially if you look at them in raid situations. And I have a couple logs here. So here's Sepulcher, overall 95th percentile. This says nothing. You have to look at specific bosses. So there's important notes here, okay? There's two types of bosses, okay? For when we're looking at single target comparisons. There's bosses that you can weave on, and there's bosses that you can't weave on. This is an important distinction because, of course, if you're able to weave, Guardian gains a lot more single target than if you're not able to weave, right? So a fight like Skolex, right? Boss design on Skolex means that you cannot weave. And this is Guardian Druid's DPS on a fight where you cannot weave in the 95th percentile, right? A fight that you can kind of weave on is Livum is a good example of a boss you can weave on. Much higher damage here. But a lot of this is probably also coming to the fact that we're padding on AoE damage. Right? On this kind of this kind of discrepancy here means that we're doing way more AoE damage. And if you look, probably you can switch it to boss damage. And we drop down a fair bit, right? Also, keep in mind, I guess this is Mythic, so you have a pretty low sample size here. You can switch this to Heroic maybe, but we drop lower, yeah. Mythic seems like a better representation, even though it's a lower sample size, but let's look at Heroic for the sake of argument. Right, so we're already pretty much even with everyone but Prop Paladins on the boss damage, but we spike up on the overall damage, even on Heroic, because of those ads, because we can take advantage of our pulsing AoE set bonus on those ads. And if you look at the problem, then the problem is not in our single target damage that we're doing to the boss. The problem is coming from the fact that we do so much AoE damage to those ads. I think like we can drill down into these logs for a bit here. So let's go Mythic, bosses, go Livum. All right, let's go. Let's click on the number one. Oh, he had 2 buffs. Let's not click on one that has external buffs. Power Infusion? No, let's not do that. All right, so if we look at damage done here by the Druid. All right, let's look. So he's got 28% of his damage done being that Architect's Aligner. And if we look at damage taken by enemies, turns out I can't read this. All right. Turns out I need to pick one that's in English. Okay, sorry, there it is. All right, let's look at this one. All right, so let's go look at his first breakdown. There it is. So Architect's Aligner, 29% of his damage. Okay, 29% of his damage on Livum, Architect's Aligner. Now let's look at the damage done or damage taken rather, from enemies from him. And look at this breakdown, right? 36% of his damage is going into the automas. 51% is going into the boss itself, right? So obviously, like, when you see this kind of thing, even if you go to Mythic, right, this isn't boss damage necessarily. And obviously, yes, all those things need to die, but coming from a tank is not necessarily where that damage needs to come from, right? And I'm saying I'm 100% on board for the AoE nerf, but I think something like the boss damage nerf was maybe a little bit unjustified. Because if we take this, like, even 51% of his damage is going to Levum, 27% of that damage is Architect's Aligner. You take 35% out of that, you're in the ballpark of a 9% damage nerf to the boss, right? Do we need a 9% nerf here? I don't think so, right? That puts us probably pretty close to the bottom. We're around here with a 9% nerf. I don't think it's necessary. AoE nerf, 100%. Single target, not so much. And that's why I don't really follow this outlier and single target situation, right? And you can do this for all the bosses, right? You can look at bosses like Thesagny, right? Relatively close, even if you're looking at overall damage here. But you know, that's like a 10% nerf in AoE, or maybe more in AoE on a fight like this, and we drop all the way down here, right? We're dropping down to here. Is it warranted? I don't really think so. But how do you fix this, right? Because clearly the tier is doing too much of our damage, right? I think maybe that's what they're trying to say here, is the tier is making up too big of a portion of our damage, which I think is fair. I think maybe contributing to that is that we're the only tier that actually shows up as its own little name on like a damage meter, and so it's much easier to see how much of our damage is our tier compared to something like prop paladins, right? Prop paladins get more judgments, which leads to more holy power, which leads to more shield of the righteousnesses, right? And so the damage comes up under those things. Blood DKs, it comes from the heart strike and the strength bonus. Brewmasters, it comes from the keg smash and the extra ox cheese potential from the extra HP, that kind of thing, right? So all these guys have their damage coming from a different coming from a source that was already in their damage meter, whereas the Guardians shows up as Architect's Aligner, and so it's easier to see how much it's doing compared to these other tanks. But obviously, I mean, like, Paladins are pumping, Blood DKs are pumping, even Prot Warriors are doing quite a bit of damage, and Brewmasters and Vengeance are a little bit more behind. I think Vengeance clearly needs a lot of love, but, you know, that's, we'll talk about that later. But I do think that's a factor, right? The fact that this, like, the Guardian Druid set bonus is the one where you can clearly and easily see its contribution to our damage. It's doing too much of our damage, 100%. I don't think it's fun gameplay at all that this set bonus that we just turn on by pressing Incarn or Berserk is dealing 20 to 40% of our damage, depending on the situation, right? I don't think that's fun gameplay. It's not interactive gameplay. It doesn't feel good personally. I don't think it feels good to have this set bonus and be high up on the damage meters, right? Like, I felt way better comparatively if you look at Sanctum of Domination when I was cat weaving, trying to hit the lowest DPSer on the damage meter. That felt way better and way more rewarding than doing Mythic Pantheon prog, being like 4th or 5th highest on damage done, doing like 16k DPS, right? It doesn't feel good because you're not doing anything. I'm just pressing Incarn and it's giving me an absurd amount of damage. I'd much rather that damage come from the Guardian Kit and put it into weaving, right? Whether that be chicken weaving or cat weaving, put in something like that. And especially in our single target, I do think post this nerf, we're going to be one of the lower single target specs, right? We're going to be probably down, but probably above Vengeance. Vengeance really needs help, but we're going to be probably the second lowest, maybe third lowest on some fights in terms of single target damage, and having good AoE damage. I don't know if that really counteracts that weakness in raid, particularly when you're looking at like what else does a Guardian Druid bring to a Mythic raid team, right? We bring a 1-minute roar. That's it. Move speed can be brought by many other specs that are popular. Boomkins, any shaman spec, all have move speed increases, right? You don't need a Guardian Druid to bring a move speed increase. And if you look at what they bring compared to like a Blood DK, right? You've got the grips, which are super important for certain fights. You've got AMZ, which is on a Blood DK, a real defensive. Prop Paladins have the whole Paladin utility kit. Warriors have Rallying Cry, and of course a raid buff. Monks have Ring, which is actually really good in a bunch of fights as well, in this raid tier in particular, on top of debuff. Vengeance has debuffs, and they're a little lacking as well. But, I mean, Guardian clearly, out of all 6 tank specs, just brings the least. And so if we're bringing the least from a utility standpoint, I do feel like damage should be something we're good at. And I'm not saying that Guardian Druids can't complete endgame content, right? I'm gonna be playing my Guardian Druid for CE. I'm gonna get CE on Guardian Druid. It is, you know, it's the tank spec I prefer playing. It's the one I'm most comfortable with, and it's the one that's going to make our prog the easiest, except for on Blood DK fights, in which I'm probably gonna have to play Blood DK. But it doesn't feel good, right? And that's I think my big problem right now, maybe on the current state of Guardian Druid, is that we don't bring a lot. And the one thing you could kind of say we brought, which was big AoE damage, that's been brought down a fair bit, but it got brought down alongside our single target, which already wasn't that impressive. If you start looking at Mythic Plus type stuff, I don't really think that this nerf affected the meta at all. I don't think Guardian Druid was really in line to be the meta tank. Maybe before these nerfs happened, they would have been a good choice for the MDI. But again, the MDI is doesn't really show who's going to be the meta tank in terms of high key stuff. And Guardian was not that tank before nerfs. They're not that tank for sure after the nerfs. And it doesn't really change much there. And again, I do think Guardian Druids needed that AoE nerf. 100% I'm on board with it. I would like to see some possible compensation to our single target, because I think now we're going to be, again, in a rough spot. Also, I mean, again, at the same time, we're talking about Vengeance needs some single target love too, for sure. But yeah, I don't know, man. Just kind of feels bad for Guardian Druids. I'd like to see a lot of changes for 10.0, I think, but that's maybe an entirely different video. But otherwise, I'm still going to be playing Guardian Druid still, and really enjoy the spec, really enjoy the weaving playstyle, that kind of thing. So I'm still going to be here. Don't you guys worry about that. But I want to know what you guys think. You know, what do you guys want for Guardian Druids moving forward? What do you guys, how do you guys feel about this tier set now that you've played with it? Or maybe you haven't gotten to play with it because you haven't been able to get tier. Who knows? Let me know down in the comments below. Always interested in what you guys have to say. Also, feel free to come stop by my Twitch channel at Tactics. Stream keys on multiple different tank specs now. Gotta gear up that Blood DK for certain Blood DK fights. But yeah, come check me out. Otherwise, make sure you guys like, subscribe to the video if you enjoyed it, and to be notified when I post new content just like this one. Maybe not as ranty, but you know. And I'll see you guys in the next video.